We are live. You're watching the Merged Marketing Podcast. You're listening to the Merged Marketing Podcast, and this is episode 180. And we're going to talk about how Roundtable marketing systems saved a business during COVID. And with me there today is Kevin and David. Welcome to the program, guys.
Hi, Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Definitely. And I've been working with David and Kevin on some marketing campaigns for a while and been part of some roundtables with them. So these guys are the experts for roundtable marketing. So I'm glad to have them with me here today. Maybe first and foremost, we'll talk a little bit about the journey to get to where you are today as roundtable marketing experts. David, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, basically, Kevin and I have worked together for probably 10 years, and we had separate B2B telemarketing companies, and we collaborated, and then we combined forces probably 4 years ago, Kevin, something like
that. The older we get, the less we don't get the dates right. Yeah, 4, 6, something like that. Yeah, 4 or 5. Yeah.
And so, but we had a really good system for generating B2B telemarketing clients using AdWords, and we were actually at one stage onboarding one new client a day, Monday through Friday. And decided about 4 years ago that we wanted to kind of, realign the business to be more of a fractional CMO type of business. So we had a smaller number of clients. We shut down all of our AdWords campaigns, and we had a smaller number of clients, and we were working in a more in-depth basis with them. Okay, everything's going along fine. And then COVID came along. And our bigger clients, our more lucrative clients, unfortunately, were in the wrong business for COVID. And so here we're sitting here like everybody else thinking, oh, this is going to end in a month. No problem, right? And then they said, oh, it can't go any longer than 2 months. Well, we all know what the story was. So we ended up, getting into big trouble because that was where a lot of our revenue is coming from. And then we realized that we had to go back to market, so to speak, and find a way to generate new clients. And it was a difficult time because obviously businesses were hunkered down. So we started, initially, we had a very, very large email list that had been built up over the years from all the prospecting we did. And we started to invite people to something, probably more like a webinar, right, Kevin? Like it was,
yeah,
it was
I would
more,
say so. Yeah.
We would say, hey, look at all the great stuff that you're going to learn from Kevin and David. Come on out to this event. And we got some people, but the problem was, as you know, everybody and their mother were running events like that during COVID. Okay. And so somewhere along the line, and I can't remember why or how, we shifted gears from promoting Kevin and David to promoting the people that were attending these roundtables, okay, and the types of businesses. And so the invitation would focus on come and learn about the problems. Here's samples of some of the types of companies that are going to be on this roundtable. We called it a roundtable / workshop. Okay. And then the amazing thing that we found in our registration form, okay, we would ask people, well, what are the specific issues that you're encountering right now? What's your biggest challenge? And then when we found that we put that verbatim in the invitation, the results shot right up. So in other words, I guess that's sort of marketing 101, correct, Jason? In other words, you're trying to capture the exact thoughts that are floating around in the head of the people that are looking. Well, of course, that allowed us to capture the exact thoughts in the exact words, the way they expressed it. So what's happening is people would see those problems expressed that way and say, oh, that's me. And then they would register for our event. And then we also shifted gears where we, instead of getting in there and giving them a bit, we would introduce ourselves briefly, and then we would say, look, this is all about you people that are here today. Let's talk about your problems. So that kind of brings you to the point where we developed the format.
So Kevin, your wheelhouse has really been LinkedIn historically, right? And LinkedIn is really the engine behind a lot of the awareness for these roundtables. Maybe explain how LinkedIn's being used as a tool to drive awareness.
Yeah, sure. So we use it. So as David was saying, when we first started, it was very heavily email driven. That's how we were getting people out to these, and you know, tens, 20, 30,000 people on a list to get a handful of people out. So we started doing a couple different things. One way we did it is we created just events on LinkedIn. You know, I don't even remember how we, you know, I'd been using LinkedIn for years, but not in that specific way. So we created some events. We started inviting our connections to these events. We thought, oh, we only have to send out, you know, 1,000 invitations, and we get 100 and whatever we got, 20 people registering, and you know, 30 people show up, and then the people that registered didn't show up eventually show up like down the road. This is great. So so we started doing that. And then the other way we do it is still through outreach through LinkedIn. Just trying to, well, one thing we did learn is you need to continuously keep building your connection list on LinkedIn, because that's who you can invite through the LinkedIn events. You can only invite your LinkedIn connections. So, and to be very intentional on who you're reaching out to. So you're reaching out to people that fit your ideal client profile. So we kind of invite them en masse or bulk through the LinkedIn event, and then we reach out to new people to connect them, to invite them to roundtables. So that's, you know, that's typically how we do it now.
I think one of the most powerful ways to use LinkedIn is doing that targeting based on job title, which is very relevant to this type of strategy around making roundtable marketing systems, right? Because I mean, spraying and praying on Facebook or Instagram might not be the best approach to garner that sort of interest. Whereas LinkedIn, you can make it very targeted, and so you're not getting a bunch of construction managers along with dentists all going to one roundtable, right? You can really siphon it off.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it would work that the part of the power of it seems to be, you know, this is a roundtable for, say, you know, VPs of sales, right? Not managers, not directors, not marketing people. It's for VPs of sales, just as an example. And they want to be on there with other VPs of sales and maybe the same type of industry or other industries, but they don't want to be on there with sales managers, or they want to be on there with people that understand and have the same issues and challenges that they do. So yeah, you're quite right. The title is very important.
Now, you guys predominantly focus or mainly focus on the B2B market. And why is the roundtable marketing system more attractive to B2B businesses? This is a layup of a question, David.
Well, I guess the reason we do it because our services are provided mainly to B2B, although, you know, we have some B2C clients. So, and then within LinkedIn itself, I think you end up getting primarily B2B. So if you're going to use LinkedIn as your platform to generate the invitations, you know, it ends up mainly being B2B companies.
So it's B2B companies are mainly the ones that are interested in these roundtables, because I can see it you know, being attractive for B2B.
You know, that wouldn't be true. Any group of people that think of themselves as being part of a group, okay, whether they're B2B or B2C, I mean, that's essentially what the attraction is. The person says to themselves, hey, that type of company looks like kind of my world, and that person, and then they are thinking title, they're thinking size of company, and they're saying, okay, is that my crowd, so to speak? So it really wouldn't matter what group. You could use it for academia, you know, any group of people that kind of think like they want to get in with their peers.
I want to talk a bit about the perfect size or the ideal size for a roundtable, because I find that the roundtable marketing system approach sort of disrupts webinars in a sense, right? Because rather than one person speaking to a group of 20 or 30, it's much more collaborative, right, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really depends on the skill of the facilitator of the roundtable. So for myself, who's not as skilled as David, I would like a smaller group because I find it hard. So maybe, you know, 4 to 6 people would probably, for me, is probably all I could handle comfortably. David, you know, we've had think probably maybe up to 10 people, David, where it's still like the main thing is you're making a promise to someone when you're inviting them. You're promising them that it's an interactive roundtable and they're going to get to participate. So we really, you want to honor that. And if you have too many people in there, it's hard to do that. So, you know, if you're a capable facilitator, which maybe I would be under that level of capable, I'll put myself there. 6 to 8 would probably be ideal.
Yeah, it makes sense. You want to give a proper opportunity for everybody to get the value out of a roundtable session as well, right? You know, don't want it to be a bait and switch where it's a roundtable, but it turns into a, you know,
sales
a
pitch
discussion, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you will find sometimes the odd person just wants to kind of hide back in the weeds, as it were. So, and conversely, you'll find someone that may want to take more than their fair share of the time. So you need to be able to manage that as well.
You got to have like a conch, you know, and a time limit on the conch.
Yeah.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, David, in terms of, you know, best practices for running an effective roundtable, what tips can you lend to the audience?
Basically, you want to engage them, and I think that's true of any event. When you go to a good webinar, usually the host is trying to engage people a little bit in the beginning. Well, it's especially true of a roundtable. And so what happens typically, they don't all come in at once. Some will come in 2 minutes before, 1 minute before, and so on. And given that it's a small group, so you try to engage them as they come in. Okay. You know, hi, welcome. You know, there's just going to be a small group. We're just coming in here. Make them feel comfortable. And then if there aren't a large number of people in the roundtable, then we'll usually ask them, just tell us a little bit about your business. What's the challenge that you're struggling with that brought you here? What was your interest in coming here? And then I typically make notes, okay, as I'm doing that, and then I reference them as we're going back as the discussion progresses along through the roundtable. I can kind of remember that, you know, somebody's in this type of business, so I'll bring them back into the discussion.
So in terms of the means of driving those attendees to a roundtable, what do you find works best? Because like you said before, you're leveraging email, LinkedIn. Are there any word of mouth, I'm assuming, as well? But what strategies are actually working best in getting those attendees to show?
LinkedIn probably gets, I don't think I'd be stretching it to say it gets at least a 20 to 30. So if we invite 1,000 connections in LinkedIn, it'll go as high as 15% that register. And you know that if you invite 1,000 people by email, and then you also got to remember that they don't necessarily know you. A lot of the methodologies we use now is where we share connections. So we may be inviting connections that don't know us personally, but we're inviting them through somebody else's connections. And so there's no question that LinkedIn is the king when it comes to it. I guess it's kind of a LinkedIn-ish thing to attend, you know, collaborative roundtables and workshops, that type of thing.
Now, you just mentioned there about inviting other people's connections to the roundtables. How do you get that buy-in from people, right? Like that's the key, because people might be, you know, a little reluctant to say, hey, look, I'm just going to spray and pray this entire audience of people that follow me on LinkedIn when they might not all be relevant for it. Is there a certain element of buy-in, or what's the incentive?
We have developed what we refer to as a master connection database. And the idea over there is, maybe you can explain the technology behind that, Kevin, in terms of how we scrape from LinkedIn in order to create a specific master connection database.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. The first part is you do need to get buy-in. You need to find a partner that wants to partner. So if someone and wants to collaborate with you, and you know, we're going to run a roundtable and they're going to invite some of their connection stars, and we'll reciprocate. So you have to have that mindset that you do want a partner. And then what we do, we want to invite people that are really hit the ideal client profile for the Roundtable. So we will go in, we have a piece of software that we use, and we'll take everyone's our partners, our connections and our partners' connections, and we'll run them through the software, and then we can get some granular data. We can get their titles, their location, their industry, how big of a company they are, and then we'll send out we'll send out invitations that way, and then that we just keep aggregating those invitations, sort of the connections and our partners into this shared pool.
So for example, Jason, if you were going to hold a roundtable and you wanted to invite a very specific industry and a very specific title, we would go into the master database and just pull down a report, right? And it would say, okay, there might be 3 or 4 different people's LinkedIn accounts that contain those connections. Then what we do is we have our admin go into each of those people's LinkedIn accounts, but only inviting the specific ones that match the criteria to your event. Okay.
I think one of the most effective approaches that we made with the roundtables that we were collaboratively working on together is the ability to leverage automation to build connections. Because a lot of people interested in this type of approach might not have the amount of connections that would make it worth their time to invite them on a regular roundtable. So maybe Kevin, you can speak a little bit to some of the automation tools and how they work in conjunction with driving awareness to the roundtables.
Yeah, sure. So we use different pieces of automation to help us reach out to people and connect with them on LinkedIn. So do you want me to name some of the specific tools?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
yeah, for sure. Because I think a lot of people don't understand the power of automation on some of these platforms to automate a lot of this. Because I think people listening right now are like, this is a great idea in theory. I'm interested, but I just don't have the time.
Yeah, half a day to do this, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, so we use we've used a lot of different pieces of software. We use this piece of software called Salesflow. We've used another one called WeConnect. There's no shortage of them. If you Google them, there's Skylead, there's Zopto, but right now we're mainly using a piece of software called WeConnect. And what we do, and that does take a little bit of work to get it set up and running. But what we do is we'll, and then we use Sales Navigator, which is a subscription add-on to LinkedIn, which has a whole bunch of filters. As we talked about before, we want to make sure that we're getting a real granular list. So we'll create that list in Sales Navigator using whatever filters fit our ICP, or our ideal client profile. And then we'll pull that into the software and we'll create our outreach messaging. And then, we'll set it up and then we'll let it run so that on a daily basis, somewhere between 40 to 50 invitations to connect per day are going out, inviting people to Roundtable. When they connect, we'll send a follow-up, automatically send a follow-up message with more details on the Roundtable. And then you could run a parallel campaign at the same time to people that you're already connected to, inviting them to a Roundtable. So that's the main piece of automation that we use. We use another piece of software called Apollo, which is that tool that actually scrapes your connections and then turns. Sorry, let me back up. When you download, it's very hard to get your list of connections out of LinkedIn. So if you download it, you don't get. If you download all your connections, you don't get a lot of information on them. So we run them through Apollo. And then we get just tons of data. You get all their social accounts. You get how many employees they have, all that good stuff. So those are the two main software tools that we use. And then we have VAs because there's still some heavy lifting, right? Because once you have those lists, we're sending those invitations out kind of manually one at a time. So we have some VAs that do that work.
Yeah, it's and I can attest to some of these platforms Kevin's talking about, just because I was able to grow my connection base pretty quickly to 4,000 from where it was at prior to us engaging myself engaging some of these platforms. So definitely a lot of power to that in terms of the automating those connections. And I mean, LinkedIn is starting to get to a place where it's becoming a little bit saturated in terms of some of that automation. So obviously you need to make it look as authentic as possible, which can be done. I feel it can easily be done just by, engaging them with a couple automated messages and then manually going in there to those people that actually receive and respond back. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to talk a bit about what we're talking about here in terms of COVID, because the Roundtable marketing system saved during COVID. Now with COVID over and people more engaging in-person live events, does that have any effect on this? Are you still seeing there are people engaged in these type of virtual activities?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Roundtable thing became a product for us, right? And we sort of scaled it to the point where we build what we call a marketing and sales operating system. And it can include running roundtables, but we also implement, as you know, because you've collaborated with us on some of those clients, social media, CRM, email automation, that type of thing as well too. So, but it became the springboard that allowed us to be able to reach out to a much larger audience and build up trust very quickly, because you're sitting in a little meeting that's not much bigger than what we're sitting in here, and people are getting to know you and trust you very, very quickly. So that opens the door for a lot of other stuff.
So I think COVID, just jumping off that or adding to it, I think COVID was like the Charles Dickens, was the best of times, it was the worst of times, because it did decimate the business. Not decimate, but it was not good. It was ugly. But people weren't as keen, 3 years ago to only do these types of interactions, right? Most of it had to be face to face. Like people were heavily driven to face, and you don't trade dollars through virtual meetings, right? You've got to be face to face. And now it's just, 3 years later, this is just how it's done. So it's really, it was really bad, but it's, because it happened, it's made these virtual roundtables, very, very easy to do now. No one balks and says, oh, I wouldn't attend those. Those are, I only do in-person stuff. So.
That's awesome. If, I think there might be people in the audience that might have questions about roundtable marketing. They might be interested in attending a session or even how they can better use LinkedIn for automation. What's the best way our audience can get in touch with you, David, and then Kevin?
That's a good question. We don't actually have a website specifically for the roundtables. I guess you can go to your website, Kevin, and they could contact you, eh?
Yeah. I mean, my company is Contact Profit Group, and it's contact with a K, and it's contactprofitgroup.com. My email is kpetty. Petty is PETTIE at contactprofitgroup.com. Again, it's contact with a K. They can give us a call, 519-823-6247. Any of those are good.
Awesome.
Or on my website, I have a video that talks about the experiences of one of our clients. So that's professionalprospecting.com.
Awesome. And we end every episode with the same question. That question is this: if you can choose one person, dead or alive, to represent Professional Prospecting Systems and Contact, who would it be and why? We'll start with you, David.
So, sorry, I didn't understand the question. What do you mean
One
represent
person, dead or alive, to represent your brand. Who would it be and why?
I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I'm going to have to defer to you, Kevin.
I was hoping you would do that. I'm just thinking of people I'd like to hang out with, but I probably would not want them to represent my company. Oh my gosh. I wish I had a heads up on that one.
You're going to have to think of easier questions, Jason.
If either of you guys listened to 179 of the episodes before this one, you would know this question gets answered at the end of every episode.
You caught us.
I guess we're guilty.
I'd have you represent my company, Jason.
Oh,
That's my answer. There you go. I like your style. I like your style. So that's my answer.
I'll take it. We're going to add that to the list. We got a lot of Muhammad Ali's, a lot of Steve Jobs, not as many Jason Hunts, but I will take that.
Jason, no, I stick with my Jason Hunt. Yeah. And actually, this is how we met. Actually, through me reaching out to you to invite you to a roundtable, probably a year or so ago.
Yeah.
So if you want to apply to run the company, just let me know when you're ready.
I'm sending my resume.
All right, good.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for your time, guys. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for having us.